everyone. Thanks for coming to my podcast. 皆さん、今日もお越しいただきありがとうございます。今日もゲストをお迎えしています。In today's episode, I have another guest who is a very good friend of mine from the States, and he's been living in Miyazaki for 6 years now. 今日もゲストとしてクリスさんをお迎えしてお話ししています。I asked some of my friends on Twitter what they would like to ask him, and I got some questions, so we are answering those questions. In part 1 of the show, we are answering most of the questions about the cultural differences between Japan and America. 第1弾目というのは Twitter で募集した質問に答えてるんですけれども、文化的な違いについてお話ししています。I hope you like it. Okay, here we go.Okay, so here we have another guest on my show. His name is Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Good to be here again.
Yeah, great. Can you tell us or the listeners a bit about yourself?
Well, I have been in Japan for 7 years now.
Oh, 7. I thought it was 6. Okay.
Or is it? 今7年目ですね. So 6 years. Yeah, 6 years. So been in Japan for 6 years. This is year 7. I've been basically an English teacher since coming to Japan. I've worked at kindergartens, elementary schools, junior high schools, even taught, adult classes privately for a little bit. So, yeah. And been friends with Rika basically since I got here.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Yes. And right now we're in the car.
Yep.
Parked by the beach, and it's super windy.
Yeah, I imagine they might be able to hear the wind through the recording.
Yeah, sorry about that, but
That's okay.
we can't really help it, so. はい、今日はなのでクリスさんといます。で、いくつかツイッターでどんな質問か何かあればお知らせくださいということを呼びかけていて、少し質問があったので、そのクリスさんと一緒にね、そのお話をしていってもいいですかね。
何のような質問かな。
どんな質問かな。質問ちょっと読み上げながらお話を。真面目かなどうかなって感じですけどね。いろんな質問が来てます。まずは、最初の質問で、じゃあ上からいこうかな。あゆこさんからの質問で、日本はもっとこうすると良くなっていくんじゃないかなということがあれば聞いてみたいということなんですけど、So her question, Ayuko, this question comes from Ayuko, and then she asks, what do you think Japan needs to be a better country?
To be a better country?
結構難しい質問ですね。
Well, yeah, I mean, there's lots of things that would make any country better.
From your perspective.
Well, I think having more people from around the world,
more diversity,
I think would be a wonderful thing. The trick is when you're in the majority, it's very difficult to understand the perspective of somebody who's in the minority. For Japanese people live in a very homogenous society. Almost everybody in Japan is Japanese. But in that particular situation, it's very difficult for a variety of circumstances for a Japanese person to understand the perspective of somebody who's not Japanese. And this goes, across the spectrum. It's not, it could be in the workplace, it could be with friends, it could be in, dating type relationships, it can be in politics and government, in a variety of stages. There's the Japanese cultural standpoint, and then there's the other perspective of anybody who's not Japanese in that circumstance. And for most Japanese people, especially because most Japanese people don't leave Japan, it's very difficult to understand even that other perspective even exists. So if you can't even understand that it exists, you can't consider it. And so having more diversity in all of these, facets, in all of these, different situations, would help Japanese people to first of all understand that there is a perspective outside their own. There is a non-Japanese perspective. And, when you're able to consider that, it opens you up to many more avenues as far as like handling different situations or solving different problems. It's like, what's a good example? 3 blind men and an elephant.
3 what?
3 blind men and an elephant. So there are 3 blind men are told to describe this elephant. Okay. The first one is taken to the elephant's trunk, and he says, okay, well, it's very thick, and it feels kind of rubbery and leathery. It's kind of like a snake. The second blind man is taken to one of the legs. He says, oh, well, an elephant it's very wide and round like a tree trunk. The third blind man is taken to the tail. And he says, oh, it's very thin and it's kind of like a rope. All of them are correct based on their own perspectives, but they don't realize that there's a perspective outside that encompasses all of them, or at least more than what they perceive. So the foreigners in this case would be saying, hey, there's this other perspective that you may not have considered. And it's not, foreigners in general. It's, people from this country and people from this country and people from this country and people from this country, like a whole bunch of different ideas being able to come together would let people know, hey, we don't have to do it just this way. There might be a better way.
すごく面白い答えでしたよね。なので本当一つのねエグザンポが面白かったんですけど、3人の、例えば例として3人の目の見えない人たちがいて、でその人たちにまず像を説明してくれって言ってね、連れて行って像を説明してくれって言った時に、一人の、その男の人にはその像の鼻をタッチしてもらって、鼻これ大きいねとかね、ちょっとこれゴムっぽいねだったりとか、なんか蛇みたいだねっていうことを言うかもしれないと。で2人目の人には今度は象の足に連れて行って触れさせてみると、すごく大きいなんか大木の根っこみたいだねとか、そういうことですよね。でそして丸いねとかね、そういう感想をもらうかな。そして3人目の人には今度は象の尻尾をちょっと触ってもらうと、これはなんかロープみたいだねとか、長いねとかね、細いねとか、そういうふうに同じ象を見たところでいろんな意見があるってことですよね。でもその人たちが触ったものしかわからないけれども、全体像として象を見るシャレit's like funny yeah okay playing on words because 象 is 全体像but anyways yeah でもそうやって多くを見ないと根本的なところがわからないよっていう例だったと思うんですけど、面白いエグザンポですよね。だから日本に必要なのは多様性じゃないかということで、もちろんね、when you compare it to the past, I mean like big cities like Tokyo or Osaka is much more diverse. I think, I believe that it is so. But like especially in the countryside, a majority of Japan is still, far away from diversity. So I think by going to places that help them understand, but the country become diverse and international. I think that will help the people living in Japan.
I think another good way, I think, would, because this happens in, I feel like, every country. Most people who are from a particular country don't really leave the country. So most Americans don't leave America to go see the world. It's a select few. Numbers wise, it's a select few. And it's the same thing in Japan. Most Japanese people aren't going to leave Japan, and if they do, it's not going to be for a long period of time. So I think a great way to help Japan would be more study abroad programs, or programs where people can go and experience other countries for like a year or two and just stay there for a year or two, you know, be immersed in this other culture somewhere else, this non-Japanese culture somewhere else for a year or two, and then come back and bring those experiences to, you know,
that's what
community.
I think that's what I learned from like living abroad for a year in Canada. It was a short time, but still like I could appreciate much more about what Japan has to offer, and also we could see the differences. By seeing the differences with the other countries, that we realize like what's needed for Japan to be better, and that was very good. すごいなんか深いお話ができていいですね。これもすごい。じゃあ、another question is kind of related to this question, so I'm just going to tell you. So, ジェリアさん, he asks, having lived in Japan for a pretty long time, what do you think about your own country? Right? 大変ですよね。特に今は especially now. Or like, okay, we could talk about the upside about it. Like, any plus side that you feel, I mean, are there anything that you appreciate more that now you live in Japan? Or let's start with that.
なんか日本に比べてなんかアメリカのなんか直接な話がなんかよりいいと思います。
アメリカの直接な話というと、
そう、例えばアメリカ人ならなんか例えばバーに行って、なんかなんか出会い人が
パーティーで、
パーティーとかなんか、普通の日、なんか出会い人がいれば、なんかいい仲になったら、すぐに I like you、
ストレートにね、
はい、
言いますね。
なんか、no questions、I like you、すぐになんか
直入に
話してもいいです。
それが
一緒にどっかに行きましょう。Let's go out sometime、you know、
でも
なんか一日から、like
最初の日からね、
最初、that's okay、here そんなことは
takes too long かな。そうなかなか最初、初めからそういうふうにはいかない。
Because なんか people are afraid to be embarrassed or afraid to embarrass other people。
遠慮したりとかね、そういうのでなかなか進まないよね。This kind of thing.
Well, I mean, it's for many Japanese people that cultural norm works. Otherwise, you wouldn't have, you know, the population would be much smaller than it is. Obviously, something about that is working for the vast majority of people. But I definitely prefer a more direct way of speaking.
Yeah, that goes with any kind of situation, you mean? Yeah.
Like I don't want to have to. Like I remember somebody told me like, oh, you have to go on a whole bunch of group dates, and then you can maybe do like a smaller group instead of like 6 friends. It could be like 4 friends, and then you can do the one-on-one dating after that. So it takes like a year. And I was like, a year?
そっか。
So yeah, I think I like the more direct.
そうね、アメリカではもっとこうストレートに行くから、そういうスタートが早いってことね。
Or I think one of my favorites is so なんか今冬だけど僕はなんか半袖でなんかもう
着るよね。
着てます。そしてなんか仕事に行ってなんか部長先生が
社長じゃない
部長先生がなんか部長はなんか私の半袖見て、寒くないですか？Now in my head, like no, I'm not cold.
That's why you're wearing them.
But maybe what he means is みんなはなんかバトンダウンなんか
ちゃんとした服装着てるよと、あったかい格好してるよと。
そしてなんか maybe you should wear a long sleeve
You
shirt
think so?
too.
そうかな? Maybe. Yeah, okay. You could
Because
say
I
it
know
like that. Yeah, okay.
they do that with a lot of the female staff too, like the female LTs. They can't have their shoulders showing.
Oh,
ever.
Okay. Oh,
So
yeah,
they
okay.
see like, aren't you cold?
Ah.
So they're not saying, they're not checking if you're cold. They want you to put on a different shirt. So in my head, it's like, look, excuse me. Everyone is wearing long sleeves. Can you wear long sleeves? Like that, I understand.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if are you serious? Are you really concerned about me being cold, or are you just saying you want me to wear something different?
I'm not too sure. Like
But
I wouldn't know.
Me either.
Yeah.
But that's why I prefer the direct speech. It's like,
Because you have these doubt mind.
If you want me to wear something different, tell me. If you're really concerned about me being cold, tell me.
I think he's purely astonished that you're wearing.
I think it may be that too.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
You wonder.
I've been in Japan long enough to know that direct speech isn't really a thing. So he might be trying, because it's happened 3 times. So maybe he's trying to tell me something different. I don't know.
Wow. That's interesting. You've been in Japan too long.
Yeah. I've been in Japan. So I've been in Japan long enough to understand that my way of thinking may not be the same as everybody else's, but I've not been in Japan long enough to know what people mean.
難しい。大変ですね。日本に住むってことは。
It's not easy sometimes.
Trying to read what this person really means.
空気を読む。
空気読むの大変ね。
はい。
空気読むって英語で read the air? Read the air っていうんだっけ？
Read the air.
そんなのってアメリカに存在するその言葉。So that expression actually does exist.
It exists.
And do people?
people do, but I think reading the air in America is much easier for an American
あ、そっか。
than reading the air in a Japanese situation.
Yeah.
So like Japanese people, I feel like it's more obvious, and then when somebody can't read the air for a Japanese person, it's particularly obvious. But it's more forgivable if it's a foreigner because we're not the same. Just like in America, it would be the same thing.
Right.
But I think I am an American, so reading the air in America is much easier.
そうね、そうね。
Here, not so much.
Yeah, そうね、やっぱり。それはあると思います。これ面白いね、でもね。
Yeah, direct.
確かにね、もうディレクトなところがやっぱりアメリカの
that
いいところかもしれない。いいところかもしれない。まあクリスさんにとってはいいこと、かな。Okay.
Maybe that's another way to make Japan a better country. Speaking directly instead of relying on people to read the air. Maybe that, I don't know.
We depend on people reading air too much that it happens too often.
And then when they don't, they get blamed. Like, why can't you understand? It's not easy to understand.
難しいな。面白いね、でもね。こんなことたくさんあるんだね。でもね、空気読めないよね。Okay, the next question comes from 英語 since 20さんかな。ハッピーホリデーズっていつからいつまで使える挨拶ですかってことで、when you say happy holidays, when can you say it? Up until when? Starting from when?
I would say after Thanksgiving is when we start saying happy holidays.
So at the end of November?
At the end of November. I think
早いね。
now there's, I guess, a couple of different schools of thought on the term happy holidays. Some people, some conservative people feel like happy holidays is there to replace Christmas. They feel like it's an attack on their religion. I see happy holidays as a way to be more inclusive of those who may not celebrate Christmas. So, for example, you wouldn't walk up to a Muslim person and say Merry Christmas. They probably don't celebrate Christmas.
Yeah, they don't.
Maybe you're a Jehovah's Witness. You don't celebrate Christmas either. Maybe you are an atheist. You don't really care about Christmas. You know, so happy holidays. You know, and there's a whole bunch of holidays that happen around that season. You know, including Kwanzaa. So happy holidays is a way to say, is a way to, instead of being specific toward a one holiday that the person may not celebrate, you are being inclusive of them and saying, hey, let me just wish everybody well around the season anyway. Not just Merry Christmas, but Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, you know, whichever one, whatever it is, Happy Holidays, I hope you're good. So.
そうね。そっかそっか。だからまあハッピーホリデーズのその宗教的な違いがあることもあるので、まあそういう人たちにも後編にというかね、言えるときに使えるフレーズではあるんですけど、So you start saying it after Thanksgiving and then up until the New Year's, or?
I would say before New Year's is when you stop, because at New Year's you don't have to say Happy Holidays. It's just
Happy New Year. Yeah, so you
and
stop.
that's when everybody knows.
Maybe New Year's Eve until then, and then after that you say Happy New Year.
Or maybe after Christmas you might stop.
ああ、そういうことか。
Because most of the Christmas type holidays would stop either before some shortly after.
So on the 26th, well, you don't have to be so specific about it. But
Yeah.
まあ、
So
まあ大体
after
クリスマスが終わったらもう、Happy New Year っていう。You could say have a Happy New Year because the New Year hasn't started yet.
Well, maybe we just say hello and then, you know, after January 1st you say Happy New Year for a few days and then let it go.
If you want to be so specific about it. まあそんなにね、すごく厳密なルールっていうのはないかもしれないけど、
Yeah,
まあ普通はハローでいいしね。で、まあ元旦とかね、そこら辺でハッピーニューイヤーでいいのかなと思いますね。はい。もう少しじゃあ行こうかな。もう一人の方からの質問は、ほぼこれね、ちょっとお名前がね、私読めないんですよね。なんて読むんですかね。すいません。ウォーキング和紙さんからいただきました。自分のことなんですが、トーカティブではない人は、この人面白くないなという印象を与えてしまうのでしょうかということなんですけど、He himself is not really a talkative person, and he is wondering if you would think that the not talkative person is boring.
I think very much the opposite. I think the ones who don't talk a lot are oftentimes the most interesting people. The ones that don't talk a lot oftentimes have the most to say.
そうね。
And they might have, you know, some of the, you know, coolest experiences or some of the most interesting stories. You just have to work a little harder to get them to say it.
それはそうかもしれない。この静かな人とか寡黙な人の方が実はね、考えてることがたくさんあって面白い人たちかもしれない。
そうそう。
でも一緒にいるときはその人からこうね、話してもらえるようにちょっとね話しかけないといけないかなってことで、まあでもそうですよね。そんなにおしゃべりしててもね、やっぱりそんなに意味のないことを話してる人もいっぱいいるので
確かに
だからそういうかえってね、静かな人にこう聞いてみるのも面白いかも。
話したばかり人はなんか面白いことが全くない。
そうそうそう、あんまりこうね、浅い shallow things that they might talk about なので、まあね、それは本当ね、おしゃべりだからって面白い人とは全然限らないと思うのでね、それはそういうことですということで、ちょっと一旦ここで終わらせてもらって、また第2弾をお話ししますね。ちょっと長くなってしまったので休憩します。